April of 2014, Lucasfilm and Disney announced that all Star Wars stories were to be rebranded under the Legends banner, and only the 6 episodes of the Star Wars saga, plus the Clone Wars TV series, were to remain canon. Now that we have passed our first major milestone in this new era, with the release of Episode 7, The Force Awakens, let's take a look at the existing canon material that is published throughout the end of 2015. The Star Wars saga begins canonically with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. No material exists at this time filling in this 10-year gap, but that will be changing shortly in 2016. Following Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, we have the Clone Wars television series, which also includes the animated film of the same name. Please note that the episodes of the Clone Wars were released out of chronological order, but StarWars.com posted the appropriate viewing order to watch these shows. Christie Golden's short story, Kindred Spirits, published in Star Wars Insider 159, immediately precedes her novel, Dark Disciple, where we follow the story of Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Vos. Around the same time is the Dark Horse comic series Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir. This series is the only Dark Horse series to be considered canon, as it, along with Dark Disciple, are based on unused scripts from the Clone Wars television show. Also between episodes 2 and 3 is the story arc First Blood, from Marvel's Kanan comic series issues 7, 8, and 9. This arc is unfinished as of the end of 2015, but should wrap up in February of 2016. At this time, no direct placement of these stories can be made within the Clone Wars time period. The 19 years between episodes 3, Revenge of the Sith, and 4, A New Hope, is ripe with story possibilities. Marvel's Kanan comic series, issues 1 through 5, a story arc known as Kanan the Last Padawan, begins by following Kanan immediately prior to Order 66, showing how he survives, and how he deals with the destruction of the Jedi. From there we move through a stretch of novels and short stories, starting with John Jackson Miller's Orientation from Star Wars Insider number 157, which leads right into Paul S. Kemp's novel, Lords of the Sith, featuring a mission that both Darth Vader and the Emperor must undertake together. The Rise of the Empire story collection begins with Melissa Scott's short story Mercy Mission, James Luceno's novel Tarkin, which gives much depth into this character, John Jackson Miller's short story Bottleneck, and his novel A New Dawn, which shows how Kanan and Hera met and began working together. Meanwhile, on Tatooine, Marvel's Star Wars issue number 7 features a tale of Obi-Wan Kenobi when he is in exile watching over Luke Skywalker. We then get a standalone short story by Alexander Freed from Star Wars Insider number 154, titled The End of History. At last we arrive to the era of Star Wars Rebels, first with the children's novel Edge of the Galaxy by Jason Fry, where we follow Zara Leonis in the Imperial Academy in Lothal, a character we meet later on in the television series. Before diving too far into the Rebels era, I would be remiss not to bring in Lost Stars, a novel by Claudia Gray, which is one of the rare cases where a Star Wars book spans multiple eras. In this novel, we follow 2 young students throughout their time at the Imperial Academy on Coruscant, through to serving in the Empire, and what happens when one of them chooses to fight for the other side. This story interacts with events from all aspects of the Star Wars universe, from this point through the original trilogy. Star Wars Rebels has drummed up quite some excitement with various publishing efforts. There are 4 original stories published as children's novels, Ezra's Gamble by Ryder Wenham, and Jason Fry's series Servants of the Empire, which includes the previously mentioned Edge of the Galaxy, plus Rebels in the Ranks, Imperial Justice, and The Secret Academy. Also, at some point between Episode 11 Call to Action and the film The Siege of Lothal, we get Michael Kogie's short story Rebel Bluff, featuring Lando Calrissian and Vizago, released in Star Wars Insider number 158. Also, Marvel's Kanan issue 6 is concurrent with the events of the television show. Oh, and let's not forget that issues 1 and 2 of the Rebels magazine are out, which contain original comics. For only a 3-year gap of time, the period after Episode 4, A New Hope, has been one of the most developed thus far. As if the camera kept rolling after the award ceremony on Yavin 4, Marvel's Princess Leia 5-issue miniseries follows Leia on a quest to round up surviving Alderaanians to preserve the culture of her adopted home planet. Almost as soon as she gets back to Yavin 4, she sends Han and Chewbacca on a mission to save a rebel spy that can be followed in Smuggler's Run by Greg Rucka. Alexander Freed writes a short story in Star Wars Insider number 151 titled 1000 Levels Down about 2 Alderaanian refugees on Coruscant, and Last Call at the Zero Angle from Insider number 156, which shows us the perspective of being a TIE fighter pilot. Next, we have Kevin Hearn's novel Heir to the Jedi, where we follow Luke on one of his first solo missions for the Rebellion, and Jason Fry's The Weapon of a Jedi, where we see Luke in his first lightsaber fight. The majority of Marvel's comic series are covering this time period. Undefined Placement includes the Lando series and the Chewbacca series, both of which are only 5 issues long. Marvel has doing a lot of work in the monthly series Star Wars and Darth Vader, which are running concurrently. Star Wars 1-6, Skywalker Strikes, follows Luke on a quest to discover how he can train himself in the ways of the Force without Ben Kenobi. Darth Vader 1-6, simply titled Vader, follows immediately after Star Wars issue number 3, where Vader goes on a quest to discover the identity of the Force-strong pilot who destroyed the Death Star. They both sync up together in issue 6, but then go their own separate ways for a bit. Star Wars issues 8-12, Showdown on the Smuggler's Moon, follows Luke in his quest to gain secret passage to Coruscant to find the Jedi Temple. And Darth Vader, 7-12, Shadows and Secrets, sends Vader on a quest to discover Luke's location. Both of these culminate in the first Star Wars crossover of the new era, Vader Down, which follows our hero's first real face-to-face encounter with Vader and his forces. Vader Down number 1 is followed by Darth Vader 13, Star Wars 13, and Darth Vader 14. 2 more issues remain to wrap up this arc. Also from Marvel, without defined placement, are the Darth Vader Annual and the Star Wars Annual. Leading us into the time of Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, is Janine K. Spinlove's short story In Brief from Star Wars Insider number 161, which is a tie-in to Alexander Freed's Battlefront Twilight Company, which follows the actions of rebel soldiers through various campaigns against the Empire. A bit sparse right now is the year between Episode 5 The Empire Strikes Back and 6 Return of the Jedi, consisting only of Cecile Castellucci's Moving Target and Jason Fry's short story The Levers of Power. In Moving Target, we follow Leia on a mission to fool the Empire into thinking that a rebel fleet was gathering far away from the actual rendezvous point. The Levers of Power ties into the other Rise of the Empire stories, and shows some of those Imperials before and during the Battle of Endor. Finally, we get into the period of time so many are interested in, what happens after Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. In this, the stories are starting to splinter off into all corners of the galaxy. Star Wars Insider numbers 149, 150, and 160 followed David J. Williams and Mark S. Williams' short story series Blade Squadron and Blade Squadron 0 Hour, following a fighter squadron during and after the Battle of Endor. Also, we have Star Wars Uprising, the mobile game that explores the Annoit sector and its Iron Blockade, and also Marvel's Shattered Empire comics, which features Shara Bay, the mother of Poe Dameron, shortly after the Battle of Endor. These all lead into Chuck Wendig's Aftermath. Not only does its main narrative show some of the efforts by the Empire to get its act together, and the New Republic efforts to stomp that out, but it also features several interludes informing us about the happenings around the galaxy. Notice also that Lost Stars finally completes its narrative here, ending around the time of the Battle of Jakku. Fast forward several years, and we get a collection of short stories that tie into Episode 7, The Force Awakens, including Alan Dean Foster's Bait from Star Wars Insider number 162, Landry Quinn Walker's Tales from a Galaxy Far, Far Away, Aliens, and Delilah S. Dawson's The Perfect Weapon. We also have Greg Rucka's novel Before the Awakening, revealing a bit of the backstory on our 3 characters, Finn, Rey, and Poe. We also have to mention that Alexander Bracken's Star Wars A New Hope, The Princess, the Scoundrel, and the Farm Boy, Adam Gidwitt's Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, So You Want to Be a Jedi, and Tom Engelberger's Star Wars Return of the Jedi, Beware the Power of the Dark Side, are all canon novelizations of the original trilogy. Also canon are the published novelizations of Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. I know that's quite a bit to follow, and there are so many different story threads being pulled on right now. These stories are giving us a sense of the larger Star Wars universe, which is a bit different from the past, which often focused on the main characters from the films. There are several ways to approach consuming all these stories, and one could argue that a chronological approach may not be the best one. I always suggest to find what medium or era speaks to you the most and start there. Keep an eye on our Facebook page and Twitter feed, as we are starting to contribute to the canon discussion beyond this YouTube channel, and we'll have various blog posts and primers coming out over the next few months for those who need a jumpstart. And as always, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to keep up with all the insight and analysis found here at Star Wars: The Canon Explained. You can also follow us on Twitter or visit us on Facebook. Till next time, may the Force be with you.